Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is At the Helm Sports. I'm your host, Derek Helm. Thank you for joining me for episode 140. Please be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that like button. And in the comments section, let me know, who do you have as your quarterback one this year? Because I've seen a couple different people go a couple different ways. Some of them are kind of crazy, but just interested to see what everybody's thinking. So it's football season. Golf is in the rearview mirror, and we are diving headfirst into the NFL. Tonight, we will be diving into the tiers for the quarterback and tight end positions for fantasy football. So it's time. Very, very excited. But first, get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way. If you are doing any best balls or just like the pick'ems, like picking stats and betting props, head over to Underdog Fantasy. Use code theHelmSports. That'll get you up to a $250 deposit match. Then also head over to the Mad Lab MMA. Basically, it's MMA, but we do NFL as well. Obviously, Mad Lab is one of the best in the game when it comes to the UFC. So you'll get all of his picks, but you'll also get all of my picks as well as college picks, Mad Lab's picks. We both do write-ups for every single Sunday, so you get the whole package over there. Also, check out yardsperfantasy.com. Everything you need to get ready for your drafts over there. If you want to do your own projections, you can do that as well. A number of premium tools also, so check that out. Obviously, it's football season. I'm in a lot of different places, and I'm very excited for football to start. So joining me tonight, we have the crew. We're all back together to kick off the NFL season. And we have James Fitzpatrick. How we doing, Fitz?
Looks good, man. Doing good. Ready for some football.
Hell yeah. And Mike Carpanini.
Boys, how are you
Mike,
now?
how we doing?
Good, and you?
And Dave Utnick.
Gentlemen, how are you? We made it.
So we're doing football
yeah.
tonight? We're not doing the Wyndham?
No, we're doing hockey, actually.
Oh, okay, cool.
I mean, the Wyndham didn't start yet.
That's what I mean.
No, there's
the Wyndham.
too much Wyndham at the Wyndham. That was awful. I might have to delete that in the editing process. That was a bad start. But yeah, we're diving into the tiers for quarterbacks and tight ends to get you ready for your fantasy season. Now, just real quick before we do dive in, I do all of my rankings, all of my projections and tiers based off of half-point PPR scoring and 4-point throwing touchdowns. So just to clarify that, if you're kind of listening and you're like, I don't know about that, just know that's where we're coming from with these. So we might as well dive right into it. 2024 NFL season is upon us, and number one quarterback I have overall. Did my projections, and I was pretty not shocked, but didn't really expect. I have Jalen Hurts number one. Now, I don't know if he scores 15 touchdowns this year, but he scored 10 touchdowns in each of his first couple seasons in the NFL. And, I think he might take a step back in the rushing department, but I think the addition of Kellen Moore as the OC definitely helps him in the passing department. Kellen Moore will definitely have them throwing the ball downfield, and that is absolutely where Hurts shines. 43% of his touchdowns in his career are over 20 yards. So if they're throwing the ball downfield a lot more, I think that definitely helps him out, especially with A.J. Brown catching those passes. So definitely like that. But last year, had an okay year. It seemed like he was banged up towards the end of the year, but 3,858 yards, 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. 605 rushing yards, and as I said, 15 rushing touchdowns. So took a step back from 760 yards the previous year, but I think he can get it done still with his legs, and I don't know if they're going to run the tush push as much, which maybe that hurts him a little bit in the rushing touchdown department, but probably prolongs his health for the season. So I do think there's plenty to like with what's going on for Hurts this year, and I'm sure we're going to have some objections here, but Dave, what do you think? Do you think Hurts is worth the number one overall quarterback?
Yeah, 100%. He's my number one quarterback also. The offense got better with the addition of Saquon Barkley. The running game is going to be better. It's going to open up even more for him in the passing game. Yeah, you lose Jason Kelce, but I still think that you're going to see the tush push this year. And Hurts still has that rushing touchdown upside, even if they're not from a half yard out.
Mike, do you have any objections to Hurts at number one?
I mean, probably not, because you guys are telling me he should be number one, but of the three you have up here, he's probably my least favorite. I would take Jackson and Allen both ahead of Hurts. So if you're telling me like this is kind of the order that people will be drafting in, like I'm good with that, because I'd rather have Allen and Jackson. I don't know. I'm just not a Hurts fan. Like, I know he's good and stuff, but I don't.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I mean, basically, my top tier is Hurts, Allen, and Jackson. Basically, I think any one of the three could finish as the quarterback one, and I am absolutely fine having any one of them. This is basically the guys that I'd be willing to take. I've seen them go as early as 3, but maybe in round 4, if you're in a league where maybe quarterbacks go a little bit later, maybe you're getting them in 5. Probably not, though. But these are the 3 guys that I'd be willing to take pretty early in the draft. So just there's really, I mean, paper thin in between each of them in their projections. I could see any of the 3 finishing as number one, but just have Hurts eking it out a little bit. Fitz, what about you? What do you think? Who do you think's finishing number one here?
I agree with you and Dave. It's Jalen Hurts for me. I love, the addition of Saquon Barkley. I think they're going to use him in the pass game. Just so many weapons there. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Goddard. I think they're going to use the tight end a little more with Kellen Moore being there. Dak Prescott put up great numbers when Kellen Moore was his offense coordinator. So I like the addition there, and I just like the O-line. I love Hurts, obviously has the rushing ability. So, Hurts is number one for me. I'm in agreement.
Yeah, and then the other thing, I've heard people say the addition of Saquon hurts him, and maybe from his total rushing touchdowns it does. But the other thing people aren't apparently thinking about is there could be a 3-yard dump off to Saquon that he takes 80 yards to the house. So you're getting passing touchdowns increasing from, he gets another superstar weapon. I think it's definitely a benefit more than it is a detriment to him this year.
I mean,
but
Hurts really still doesn't check down. So I think Barkley's asset is just, in him carrying the ball and spreading out the rest of the offense. I mean, we'll get into the receivers afterwards, but really like Devonta Smith this year. A.J. Brown, I think his weapons around him through the air are really going to be where you see him thrive. But he's not historically been a quarterback that throws to his running backs at all.
No, I don't think he will a lot, but when you have Saquon Barkley and Kellen Moore as an offensive coordinator, I absolutely think there will be design plays to get him the ball in space. But from a rushing standpoint too, I mean, you have 2 of these guys in the backfield at shotgun running the read option. I mean, you can't just focus on Hurts like you used to. You got to pay attention to Saquon, which probably opens up some running lanes for him as well.
Great.
But Mike, who do you have number one overall?
I'm torn, but I don't understand how you have Patty Mahomes in the second tier. I'm also not a huge fan of his either, but he's still the best quarterback in football probably right now. I get it's a fantasy show, I get that, but I have Mahomes.
Answer the question.
Allen or Jackson. I don't think I'm coming up very high for any of the quarterbacks. I think Allen's receiving crew is so bad, he's going to rush for 1 billion touchdowns this year. And Jackson is just, if Jackson can stay healthy, that's the only time Jackson has down years is when he can't stay healthy. So I'm totally good there. If you're telling me, more people are going to be jumping up to take Hurts, I'll gladly take one of these other 3 dudes up here. Although, in fairness, I don't see a reason to reach for quarterback if this is the quarterbacks I'm reaching for. I like the lower tiers a lot.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, I'm fine with any one of these guys, and the reason I have the 3 of them there is I think any one of them can finish as the number one overall quarterback. As far as Allen goes, 4,306 passing yards last year, 4th most in the league, 29 touchdowns. He threw a lot of interceptions last year, 18 of them. He also had 15 rushing touchdowns, only 52 designed runs, so a little bit less than Hurts. But I do think that they want him to run a little less. Now, can you get Josh Allen to run a little less? Probably not, maybe a little bit. But what worries me is and we'll get to Mahomes, but what worries me about Allen is it's very similar to Mahomes last year. He doesn't have the weapons as much as he did. And we saw it kind of come back a little bit last year. Once Brady took over, he was only 32 attempts per game, which was 14th in the league, only 243 yards passing. He had 10 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So if Joe Brady is calling this offense again, I could see it being a little bit more conservative, and there is no clear-cut number one on this team. So just for that reason, I think I have Hurts a little bit ahead of him, but I could still see him finishing number one overall because he's Josh Allen and he can carry all these guys himself. And he also has the factor of the rushing game, which Mahomes didn't. But just I think it's a slight knock, and you can't say that it isn't, because he's going to take a little bit of a step back, I think, in the passing department. Dave, would you agree with that?
I mean, I agree, but kind of for different reasons here. I still think Josh Allen is probably my clear cut too, but the Bills until like 2/3 of the way through the season were fucking terrible. Josh Allen went full Superman to put that team on his shoulders and get them into the playoffs. I think he ran for, it seems like he was running for 2 touchdowns a game every week of the season for the last 6 weeks. I don't see him doing that again in terms of his rushing touchdown upside. It being a little bit more conservative only because he was so aggressive down the stretch of the year. I'm not that concerned with his weapons. Joe Brady's got Curtis Samuel he had in Carolina. They like him. Keon Coleman's starting to flash a bit. And, Dalton Kincaid is a legitimate pass catcher. So I think he's got enough weapons. And I don't think they'll dial it back like the Chiefs did, who were just kind of waiting it out for the playoffs. The Bills have some real competition this year for the conference and the division.
Yeah, I agree. Fitz, where are you at on Allen?
Yeah, I'm a disagree. I think the lack of weapons is going to hurt him. I think he will take a step back, and I'm even willing to take him out of this tier 1. And, looking at your rankings at theHelmSports, you have Mahomes in tier 2. I'd probably swap and put Mahomes in tier 1 and Allen down in tier 2, because, the lack of weapons is a problem. Like you said, that's why he had a lot of those interceptions last year, because he was pressing. He didn't have, a lot of those guys getting open to throw the ball to. You just have a bunch of guys there. Curtis Samuel, okay, yeah, KJ Hamler, you just a bunch of names. You got the rookie, but Keon Coleman, but he's a rookie. Yeah, Kincaid should take a step forward, a little safety blanket there, but I don't, obviously he's going to get, he's going to get his rushing. He'll have rushing touchdowns, and but it is prone to, more mistakes there, and I just don't see any difference makers on offense. As far as the surrounding cast, supporting cast, it's really just him. So, yeah, he's not my number 2. Like I said, I'd even, argue you can take him out of this tier and put Mahomes, because you want to, go to Mahomes. He's a guy who, though he can take a step back last year, he put up huge numbers last year. Now this year he added Hollywood Brown. They got Worthy, a bunch of speed there. So and when Andy Reid offense is going to get creative, he's going to put up, that offense is going to be great. So, yeah, I'm a little down on Josh Allen.
Yeah, we're ignoring the elephant in the room that Chase Claypool is a perennial 1,010 guy. So, there's 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns for Allen right there. And if you're telling me he can't get like another 2,520 for the whole rest of his team, I tend to disagree. I've been told by a reliable source that Chase Claypool is a 1,010 guy.
I think Derek will get there when he does his making waves segment. But
yeah, that'll be next week on the wide receiver show. But yeah, I'll get to Mahomes, and he really didn't have incredible numbers. Maybe you think he did, but compared to what Mahomes has done, it was a pretty pedestrian season. I'll get there. But first, the last guy I have in this tier is Lamar Jackson. Just said it last year. I thought the addition of Todd Monken was going to be a huge help to him in the passing game, and it certainly was. 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So, definitely increase there. Last year, he had a career high 3,678 yards, so also helped there. Part of the reason why I think Kellen Moore also helps Hurts, similar to Todd Monken helping him last year. And then he had 500 more yards passing last year than he did in his MVP season. So definitely love that. And then, of course, we have the rushing. He had a quarterback best 821 rushing yards last year. Don't think that's going anywhere. Now, he doesn't score as many rushing touchdowns as Allen and Hurts do, but the improvements in the passing game and the floor that he provides with the rushing, and if he happens to score 7 touchdowns, which with Derrick Henry there, maybe not, I definitely think that number one quarterback overall is definitely in the picture there. But Mike, what are you thinking with Lamar?
Health. If he can stay healthy, Lamar is going to be Lamar. His weapons are never great. I'm not super worried about his weapons because he's never really had them. He got a running back this year, right? It was Big Dog, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean that's going to take away some of his goal line work, but he's different than Hurts and Allen. Hurts and Allen are going to get a lot of their touchdowns from inside the 5. Jackson can take it to the house from anywhere. So I'm still very good with him being up here in this top tier. Maybe I jumped the gun a little bit saying he's markedly ahead of Hurts. I think that's probably just me not being a super big Hurts fan, but I'm totally good with him being up here.
Fair enough. Fitz, what about you? Where are you feeling Lamar should be?
Yep, love Lamar. I have him as my my second quarterback behind Hurts. The more years in the league, he's going to improve as a passer. I like, the weapons they added last year, Flowers. I think, Flowers in his second year can only take a step forward. Obviously, he's got the connection with Andrews. Another year in the offense. Love Lamar. He's, like I said, where you can have a quarterback that can literally take it to the house from anywhere on the field. So he's going to get his rushing yards. He's improving as a passer. And, he's my number 2. Love Lamar.
All right. Dave, what about you?
Lamar's still in that tier just because of the upside. I don't think that Henry is going to take too much from him. Having Zay Flowers another year in the league, having Mark Andrews back healthy, having Isaiah Likely kind of emerge, those are nice weapons for him. But they don't really have much past that. Wide receiver 2 is still allegedly Rashad Bateman. And until that rookie comes on and takes his job, there is some things still lacking in that offense. So only a slight concern. He had a great year last year, like Mike said. Lamar's best, trait is his availability at this point. If he's in there, he's going to be dynamic and can really put up, slate-breaking weeks for you. Really, it doesn't even matter on his opponent because you can see him go nuclear on a week-to-week basis. So has plenty of that upside. Just don't like his offense as much as some of the others here.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we can get to Mahomes now, and I have him in a tier of his own at tier 2. With Mahomes, I don't know that he necessarily has number 1 overall upside as far as fantasy goes. Obviously, from an NFL standpoint, he is the clear-cut number 1 quarterback in football. But from a fantasy standpoint, not really great. Fitz, last year, he was quarterback 8. So really, it wasn't that great. But the reason why I have him here by himself is that's basically his floor. So, I don't see him finishing as number 1, but I don't see him. Basically, I see him from 4 to maybe 8 like he finished last year. So you are getting absolute safety with Mahomes. You know he is going to be solid. I don't worry about him at all. So if he's my quarterback 1, I absolutely love it. I just don't know if I'm willing to take him in those earlier rounds and skip over some of those wide receivers and running backs there. I think he has a little bit less upside. Last year, 4,183 yards. Not bad. 27 touchdowns. Lowest since 2019. 14 interceptions. That was a career high. But like I said, that's basically his floor. You can blame a lot of that on the wide receivers. The wide receiver core has been improved. So definitely do like that. And he actually ran quite a bit last year, 75 rushes and 389 yards. Both of those are career highs. 0 rushing touchdowns. So maybe he can add 2 of those and that helps also. But just the way I see this now is Dave, you kind of touched on it before, is this is very similar to the old Patriots teams, is where they don't even give a shit about anything in September. They're basically just playing to make it to the Super Bowl, and they don't even put their foot on the gas until it's time to make a playoff push. They have a much better defense. They have an improved rushing game. So I don't think that they have to rely on Mahomes throwing 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. Can he do it? Sure. But I just don't think that that's the way that this team is built anymore. So Fitz, you could tell me your rebuttal to that.
All right. I mean, it's not a strong rebuttal because I don't really hate how you have him there at, in tier 2 by himself as the fourth quarterback. My only argument would be is what you kind of mentioned is he has the upside where he can finish in that tier 1. I mean, he can literally, finish, the second or, even the first quarterback if they click there. So my argument was before, like I said, they added Hollywood Brown. They added, the rookie, super speedy, super fast rookie Worthy. Kind of taking that Tyreek Hill role. Obviously, he's not going to be Tyreek Hill, but just opening up that.
And Fitz does what Fitz usually does, and totally shits the bed. Good old technology problems with James Fitzpatrick.
Damn, he was doing so good.
He was.
Drafted a couple of
I literally said too. Mahomes is just he's steady. You know exactly what you're gonna get, and Fitz is the exact same way. So it's exciting. Mike, why don't you take over there? How are you feeling on Mahomes?
Maybe half, but tier 2 feels low. Like tier 1.5. Like he's a ball hair shy of that top one, but I think he belongs up there just because he is the best quarterback. Like I get last year was down, like you said, it was his floor. I think in fairness, I think we thought it could have been worse when looking at his weapons at the beginning of last year. I just have a hard time dropping him any lower than this.
Makes sense. All right, so tier 3, I have just 2 guys, and mainly it's because of their rushing upside. I just think that it provides them a really safe floor, and if they can get it together in the passing game, I really think that can propel them forward as far as their ceiling goes, and that's basically Kyler Murray and Anthony Richardson. Now, Murray was banged up, but when he came back last year, ended up looking pretty damn good. So, his average for his career is 3,827 yards and 23 touchdowns through his first 3 seasons. So, I mean, those full seasons, I think if he can get a full season in, that's basically where he's going to be because these weapons are definitely better than what he has had. He's also averaged 489 rushing yards over all of his seasons, and that's even including the last 2 where he basically only played a couple games. So I think you get a very safe floor. I think the ceiling is as high as it's ever been on a points per game basis. In 2019, he was the quarterback 2. And honestly, I think if everything goes right with these weapons and if he's running the ball and can elevate in the passing game a little bit, I could see him even elevating up into that top 3. But I don't think it's necessarily a probability, but it's definitely a possibility. So that's why I have him here. And then Anthony Richardson, basically it all just comes down to health. Obviously, that's a huge question, but with the upside that he flashed in just 2 games last year, I am absolutely willing to take that chance here. And then obviously would probably take someone further down the board just as a safety blanket. But I love what he showed. I mean, the rushing ability, and I do think that this wide receiver core has some talent. So this is what I have for tier 3. But Dave, what do you think about these 2?
I mean, this is where we can at least start arguing. I think the top ones are pretty cut and dry here. I would agree with you on Richardson. Would I put him in this tier with how risky he plays and what we saw out of him? I mean, he played, 2 full games and was knocked out of 2 other ones before being out for the season. I mean, when he plays full games, his potential is here on this tier and could even be higher than that. Kyler Murray, I just don't think Arizona is going to be good enough for him to have that touchdown upside and for him to get there. I have him, who I do like this year, but I think this is just way too high on Kyler. But I'm with you on Richardson. Again, it's a high risk pick for the tier, but I just think you have Kyler way too high. There are other quarterbacks like CJ Stroud playing on much better teams that have way more upside in terms of passing yards and just real weapons and bona fide weapons than we're looking at with Arizona here. I mean, you've got an aging James Conner. Your number one passing option is either, a rookie and a very good one in Arizona and Marvin Harrison Jr., or Trey McBride, who's done it, only impressively for maybe a 6-game stretch. So I think there are too many question marks for Arizona and that offense really to put Kyler up here. And Kyler is coming off that ACL too. So, he does have his own injury history.
I think he was definitely healthy towards the end of last year, and he definitely showed flashes of vintage Kyler. I've never been a Kyler guy, but I mean, these weapons are absolutely, whether a rookie or not, they are without a doubt the best that he's had in his career. So the fact that he's already finished as the number 2 quarterback in his career and now actually has these weapons, I definitely think it's within the realm of possibilities. And just like I said, I mean, it's 4-point touchdowns. So yeah, you brought up Stroud, but he literally might run for 150 yards. He's not going to have any rushing upside whatsoever. He can prolong a play similar to Mahomes, but he's not going to have that rushing upside. So that's just the reason I have these two guys here, is just you're starting off with basically 6 points every single week from them. So I love that floor, and I do think that if the passing comes along with it, they actually do have a higher ceiling than the strictly pocket passers, which most of them I have in the next tier. So that's really my reasoning there. Mike, I mean, what are you thinking?
I'm with you there too, but it's just I don't even think Kyler throws for as much. And remember, Kyler had Hopkins in his, I wouldn't call it his prime, but towards the end of his prime. So
yeah, he's definitely
had real
good
weapons before.
Yeah. Mike, what about you? What are you thinking here?
I don't touch Kyler here. That's just not for me. I personally just don't think Kyler's all that good at football anymore, and might not really have ever been. Richardson, I think, is super interesting. Really high risk, really high reward. I would love to see. I think if he stays healthy, there's no reason he can't be, way up in there in that top tier. But I just don't know if he could really stay healthy. I'm waiting for the next couple of tiers, because I think you're completely upside down here on 3 and 4.
Yeah, and I mean, I went back and forth. I actually almost made it all one tier, but I gave the reasoning. I love the rushing upside of these quarterbacks. It is a cheat code in fantasy football, and maybe from a scoring standpoint, it should strictly be 6-point touchdowns for passes, because it just gives these rushing quarterbacks such an advantage. And like I said, you're basically starting with a rushing touchdown every week. These guys are going to run for 5 or 50 yards. You're getting 5 points literally before the game even starts, basically every single week. Fitz, what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with Mike more on Kyler Murray. I mean, say that he's not good, you're not sold on him. I mean, I think he's just huge upside. I mean, the guy, like you mentioned, can run all over the place. You're going to get your little buffer there with the rushing yards. But I mean, just the arm talent alone. I mean, he's just super accurate. He's got a gun on him. He can, make something out of nothing. And, the weapons he's got there, like you mentioned, Derek, Marvin Harrison, get the best, wide receiver in the draft. Trey McBride coming on last year as a legit tight end option. I like Greg Dortch in the slot. They had Zay Jones. They got the Michael Wilson. The big target for him. So yeah, I like his weapons. I like him. I'm totally fine with Kyler Murray here in tier 3. Anthony Richardson, I'm not sold on. I mean, the small sample size last year, I think he needs to do more as a passer to really, solidify himself in this tier, because if he's going to do what he did last year and just run it all over the place, I don't think he makes the season again. He's just, you can't run, 20 times as a quarterback and take that many hits. So I think he's unproven as a passer. So I think he needs to take that next, jump as a passer. Because all these other guys, Kyler Murray, yeah, he can run, but they're good passers. Hurts, he can run, but he's a great passer. Lamar Jackson, he's still a better passer than a Richardson. So I think Richardson needs to do more and a bigger sample size before I put him here. Definitely has the upside. I see why you have him here, but maybe if you want to, like I said, these two tiers, tier 3 and tier 4, are close. But maybe take Dak, because Dak has the weapons and also the rushing upside. Maybe put Dak in here in tier 3, and then we got a bunch of guys coming up, and then we'll talk about it going to tier 4. It didn't age well for me last year. He doesn't have rushing upside, but Joe Burrow, I think, still has a huge ceiling if he can stay healthy. But as far as tier 3 goes, I agree with Murray. I'm on the fence with Richardson.
Yeah, it definitely comes down to health with Richardson. And basically, I see him as potentially even a better Lamar. Now, obviously, Lamar is a lot more established, which is why he's much higher up here. But it's a big question with the health of Richardson. But I think he could be a freak. But yeah, if we go to tier 4, like I said, I mean, I went back, and this was without a doubt my biggest decision was a break in this tier, because I almost went with all of these guys together. And as I said, it's just these guys don't provide the rushing. So I think it just limits their ceiling slightly when you're not running in fantasy football. But I have Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott. Not necessarily in that order. That's kind of the way that I prefer them. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if any of these guys finish a little bit higher here. But I like Jordan Love quite a bit. Started off hot in the touchdown department, kind of regressed a little bit in the middle of the season. But I mean, the end of the season, it just looked like he had absolute command of this offense. Really not superstars as pass catchers, but they are very solid. And they were the youngest team in the league last year. People forget he's not a rookie. He sat behind Aaron Rodgers for years, and granted, he didn't play, but he definitely took command of this offense over the back half of the year. I mean, from week 10, he had 18.7 points, 20.9, 26.6, 23.7, then a couple meh games in there with 10 points, 17.5, and then finished really strong with 24, 28.4, 18.5. So he was very consistent over the back half of last year. I just like what I saw from him. Now, 32 touchdowns last year. I don't know if that's repeatable, but I could definitely see him throwing 30 touchdowns. So I do like Love. He also adds a little bit more than these other guys in the rushing department. Nothing crazy. He had about 250 yards last year and a couple touchdowns. So if he can score 4 touchdowns again, I mean, it's very similar to what we saw from Dak early in his career. He didn't run a ton, but you were going to get 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns from him with his passing upside. So I definitely love that. Fitz, you said Burrow. I mean, obviously last year was just a wash with the calf injury. He tried playing through it, and then it was just a complete throwaway season. But in his last 2 healthy seasons, 4,400 yards, 4,600 yards, 35 touchdowns, 34 touchdowns. He can actually run for a couple touchdowns similar to Love. So I love him as well. I think if Burrow stays healthy with Chase and Higgins, if they can stay healthy and one of these other guys can contribute, I do think that Burrow definitely will be much higher than where I have him here. CJ Stroud, love the guy. I do think he is one of the next superstars. The wide receiver core is incredible, possibly one of the best in football. But there were some inconsistencies last year. Now, granted, he was a rookie, but 63% completion percentage, that definitely has to go up. And I haven't seen it yet from him. So that's part of the reason why I'm not completely sold. Now, you could say the same thing about Anthony Richardson. Haven't seen it from him. But like I said, just that rushing upside, I think it provides a little bit more of a ceiling. So that's why I have Stroud here. And then I have Dak Prescott. Same thing. I mean, he's just turned into a solid quarterback. Top 30 touchdowns for the 3rd time in his career last year. possible that they run with Zeke a little bit more in the red zone. So maybe that touchdown number comes down a little bit, but the defense also took a step back also. So they're going to have to pass more. So that's basically where I'm at with these guys. But Mike, what are you thinking about this tier here?
Yeah, you're bugging. Dak is the only one in this tier. Love, Burrow, and Stroud are at like tier 2.2. Like I have them all that high. Give me all Burrow, especially. I think, Burrow, I am Burrow whispering in the preseason. I'm calling it early. Burrow is going to be a fucking monster this year. I think it is the Burrow revenge tour. I am totally good drafting him ahead of most of these other dudes that we've already talked about. I want all the Burrow. I'm a huge CJ Stroud fan. I said it a bunch of times last year. Again, I think, second year player like that's the only thing that worries me. But if he takes a step here, I think you're looking at the next great quarterback. Now that McCombs is getting a little bit, not old, but he's not a kid anymore, and Love just super solid. Like I'm totally okay landing on Love almost anywhere. Definitely ahead of Murray, probably ahead of Richardson, just because Richardson is so risky. This is what I was waiting for. These are my entire target for this year's quarterbacks.
Yeah, and another reason why I'm a little bit lower on Burrow is that is a very tough division as well. You got to figure towards the end of the year, they're going to play in a bunch of shitty weather games. So I just having to play Cleveland, having to play Baltimore, and the Steelers aren't an absolutely horrific defense. That's just a little bit of a knock as well. So that's part of the reason why I knocked them down a little bit. But Fitz, what are you thinking here?
Hey Mike. Hey Mike. What do you think of Naked Burrow?
Not as intriguing as Naked Lamar. Naked Lamar always intrigues me.
The blonde hair doesn't do anything for you?
Not yet. I mean, we'll see. But yeah, that's another.
Yeah, I forgot. I think we should talk that, man.
Give me blonde Burrow.
Coming out full Slim Shady. Let's go. That's even better.
That's a good point. I should probably move him up a tier just on that alone.
Absolutely. I like everyone in this tier. I kind of mentioned I might have moved, Dak out of it and out of Richardson. I love, me, I love Joe Cool. Jordan Love, coming out, he was, super high upside, just raw. He's got the ability, time to sit and develop. And yeah, he's got a lot of weapons there. I love Jordan Love, love CJ Stroud and, Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon and another year in that offense. The only one I might push into this tier is Jaden Daniels. I mean, we were so, shocked how Anthony Richardson did last year as a rookie with his rushing upside. I think, Jaden Daniels has a lot of weapons there and, McLaurin and I think, with his rushing upside, he can, I can see him finishing as high as these guys. But pretty much I like everyone in this tier. I'm with you. Love Joe Cool the most. Like I said, he's probably going to finish. I can put him in tier 3 if you can count on the health. And but I'll put Jaden Daniels here, and I'm cool with these 4 guys.
Dave, what about you?
I agree with Fitz on Daniels. I'd rather push some of these quarterbacks like Love and Prescott down to Daniels. I don't think Daniels and Stroud or even Kyler are going to be on the same tier for me. I mean, what you're doing is you're looking at where you want to take these guys in drafts and who you want to prioritize. That's exactly
how I have it.
So, Burrow, Stroud, those are offenses I want to invest in. And even though they're not running quarterbacks, I think those are going to be very good teams. Also, neither of them have a terribly strong running game where they're going to probably do a lot of damage in the air. So, it's more about who you're prioritizing where. I like the progress Jordan Love made, but I'm not ready to push him up into this class just yet. I'm more comfortable with pushing him and Prescott down to the next tier, where really, Burrow, Stroud, and this is where I'd have Kyler. That's kind of the pocket that I'm looking at here.
That's fair. And just, I think the reason I like Love a little bit more than Stroud is just a little bit more experience in the NFL, and I believe in this coaching staff a little bit more as well. So that's part of it. But if we jump into the next tier, I mean, you said it, Jaden Daniels can absolutely skyrocket here. Tier 5, I have Brock Purdy and Jaden Daniels, and Daniels. The only reason, we haven't seen much from Richardson, but he does have an entire NFL season under his belt. We have no idea what Daniels is going to be. Yes, he is electric. He should be very good. He has a very good arm, and he's absolutely going to give you the rushing. But just the fact of that unknown, and then also, I am taking in ADP into consideration here. It's just these are kind of where I'm targeting these guys, and I'm fine with any one of these guys as my quarterback one, but this is really the order that I'd be willing to take them in. So I do like Daniels. Fitz, you said it. I think he has a pretty good receiver core. I don't know if it's great, but it should be good enough for him to be able to be an okay passer in year one. And then Brock Purdy, I mean, he is very, very underrated. Just I think a lot of it has to do with just the draft capital that he had, and just people really haven't gotten over that. But the guy, I mean, he's throwing 30 touchdowns a year now. Granted, looks like Ayuk is probably going to get traded, so maybe that's a little bit of a knock. And if McCaffrey really is hurt, he might be coming out of this tier. But these are basically my top 12 quarterbacks, and I'm fine with any one of them there. But Dave, what do you think about these guys?
I don't love Brock in this tier. I think there's a lot of uncertainty going on with the Niners. I don't buy too much into trends, but losing the Super Bowl, you usually don't rebound as strong, just historically speaking. The Ayuk trade does hurt that offense. So, I'd rather bet on talent around him. The unknown of Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence making a leap. I'd rather have those guys than Brock Purdy this year. Just really personal preference. Brock Purdy was extremely efficient in an extremely efficient offense. Can he replicate that, especially if you start taking weapons away? I mean, we're talking about the Niners offense right now before anything happens with Ayuk. If Ayuk is back there somehow, which doesn't look like, then this may be looking different to me. But if you're going to remove a valuable piece of that offense now in the preseason, I think that's going to disrupt a lot of things. So I'm not reaching for Purdy this year. I mean, betting on the Niners, their offense was, otherworldly last year, but this is not what you'd like to see in camp, I think, is the easiest way of summing that up.
Yeah, I agree. And come next week, by the time we do the wide receiver show, Ayuk could be a Steeler. He could be on a different team. But I also think that it's in the realm of possibilities that, he sees that maybe the grass isn't greener somewhere else, and maybe a deal can't be done, and they end up re-signing him. And if that's the case, I'm absolutely fine with Purdy here. If he does go, I will absolutely consider moving him. But Mike, what are you thinking here?
I mean, I think you're about right here. I think these are in the ballpark of the last two off the board in like a 12-team league. I can see what you're all saying about both of them. I personally would have a couple of different quarterbacks here as my last two, but I can see the argument made. I'm higher on Purdy than most other people. I like him as a player, but again, I also don't super give a shit about the fantasy. Like, same argument as Mahomes. He's just a good football player, so I'm going to put him here, even though fantasy wise he may not be as high scoring as a lot of these other guys. I know you referenced it, but I don't give a fuck about ADP. I'm going to go out and get the dudes I want to get when I want to get them. I don't give a shit where everyone else is drafting them. So if I want them where I want them, that's where I'll get them from. So I'm not super concerned there either. But at this point, I'm just waiting to talk about Rodgers and Darnold.
Fitz, what are you thinking here?
Oh boy. Yeah. So you say, Purdy's more just a good football player. He's also a good fantasy player. He was the 6th overall quarterback in fantasy points last year. But even saying that, I probably take him out of this tier. I had Jaden Daniels in a tier above. So this tier is 3 quarterbacks for me that you don't have, and it's Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, and it's Tua. Those are just 3 offenses that like Dave said, I want a piece of. I love Kirk Cousins this year. I think with the weapons he has and Drake London and hopefully Kyle Pitts doing something and Darnell Mooney and Bijan Robinson and, run game. I just, we saw what Kirk Cousins can do in Minnesota with less. So I really like Kirk Cousins. Jared Goff's always been my guy. And, that offense is definitely on the up, a bunch of weapons. He was, he had a great year last year. Finished as number 7 fantasy quarterback, and then Tua is just that offense also. With Tyreek Hill and Waddle and everything they got going there, if he can stay healthy, it's Tua, Goff, and Cousins in this tier for me.
That's fair. And just last thing on Purdy is and with Ayuk gone, I mean, it probably would take a step back, but he's also a very good deep ball thrower. Last year, 70% over 20 yards. That actually led the league for quarterbacks with at least 100 snaps. So I think in this offense, they are efficient. I mean, he threw for 4,200 yards and 31 touchdowns. That's basically what Dak has done. So and he's going much, much later. So that's one of the reasons why I'd be fine if I absolutely waited on quarterback and just all the quarterbacks went. I'd be fine taking him as my quarterback 1 if I just waited long enough. So that was part of the reason why I put him there. But Dave, who do you like that maybe you would put up in this tier, or maybe you might be targeting later?
In terms of targeting later, I mean, I'd bump up Kirk Cousins. I'd bump up Trevor Lawrence. I'd bump up Caleb Williams just based on upside, or maybe we're dealing with different tiers now. But, a couple of guys that we haven't talked about. Justin Herbert has the injury issue, but he is still a talented quarterback. Yes, they're going to a run-heavy offense, but doesn't mean that they're not going to pound the rock and stretch the field too. It'll be interesting to see if that injury lingers on, but they say it isn't. Who knows? Deshaun Watson, I'm interested in late in drafts. Aaron Rodgers, I'm interested in late in drafts. I mean, I think the Jets offense is going to be really dynamic, at least until the circus comes to town and, the train falls off the tracks here, which is just Jets football. So those are a couple of guys that I'm looking at late in drafts. I'd like Daniel Jones, but I'm also not convinced he's going to play the whole year. So, I think he's got great upside at a really cheap cost in ADP, but he's not going to be your QB1, and who knows what's going to be, what type of contributions he can make down the stretch for you.
Yeah, I like Jones. I've actually taken a little bit of him in best ball. As you said, it's basically he's free, and with his rushing upside, I mean, if I made a case for Purdy. If you literally just lose on, let's say you're going to take Purdy or one of these other guys you just mentioned, and all of a sudden somebody takes their second quarterback, and you literally have nothing. Daniel Jones, you could have worse options, and if he ends up getting hurt or losing his job, then you go to the waiver wire. But I think that's fine. As far as Caleb goes, incredible situation for a rookie. We really don't see it often. I kind of like that. Kirk Cousins just coming off the Achilles. Same with Rodgers. Just at their age, part of the reason why I kept them out of there. But I do think you can definitely take a chance on them. They should be rostered. Trevor Lawrence, I made a case for him to make a huge leap last year. And, part of it was he was really, really banged up, showed his toughness, which was incredible. But just, I don't think he's ever going to live up to what we thought he was going to be in the draft process. Now, granted, to be fantasy relevant, he doesn't necessarily have to do that. I could still see him being a top 10 quarterback. But just, I don't know if I want to go into the season with him as my quarterback 1. So Fitz, who are you targeting later here before Mike goes on his tirade?
Yeah, I don't want to steal too much of his thunder, but I do like Aaron Rodgers late. If he can stay healthy, for once the Jets, might actually have an offense. They got a lot of weapons there, and I don't think Rodgers is done yet. So I think I could see a good year from him. I do like Deshaun Watson late, like Dave mentioned, and. Yeah, I mean, maybe, I like Trevor Lawrence, Rodgers, and Deshaun Watson. Those are probably 3 guys I like late.
Mike? You're muted, so It's a good start.
Look at the weapons Aaron Rodgers has around him. Garrett Wilson is fucking primed for an absolutely monster year. I cannot wait for the wide receiver show. I cannot fucking wait for the wide receiver show. I think Mike Williams, if he can get back on the field, just that
you could save some of it for the Jets show too.
Okay, the Jets show to Malichi or whatever the hell Fitz called Corley at the rookie draft. I think he's
it was Malaki.
It's Malaki.
Malaki. That's
Mike,
what it was.
right. Malaki.
It's Malaki. Brees Hall, a healthy Brees Hall. Like I just got
all right.
The list goes on and on. We increased the offensive line better.
Not the Jets preview.
Could be like 2015, 2016. Aaron Rodgers.
Just say Aaron Rodgers is a late quarterback and name some others.
I did that. And now I'll say the same thing about Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has never had a player like Justin Jefferson. I see no reason why, Sam Darnold can't, hold off the rookie, have a really good year, and put the Vikings in a really tough spot next year. The Central, the Lions are really good. The Vikings, I don't think are I think they can battle with Green Bay there for potentially, a high-end wild card there. I see no reason why Darnold can't, put together a very decent season.
Okay. When we do the wide receivers show, I do like Jefferson, regardless of who the quarterback is there, just because you have to throw the ball to Jefferson. But I worry about Darnold a little bit because I am a J.J. McCarthy believer. I do think that he's going to be an NFL quarterback. I don't know that he'll necessarily be a superstar. They have a bye week of week 5 or 6, I think it is, and I could 1,000% see if Darnold's just okay and they're seeing McCarthy do well in practice, I could see once they get out of the bye week switching over to the rookie. So that's my concern there. I will say, though, from a best ball standpoint, or more so a DraftKings standpoint, using Darnold the first couple weeks and pairing him with a Jefferson, he'll probably be very cheap. So that's probably going to be an interesting stack to look at. Haven't really looked at the week 1 pricing yet, but that's definitely something that I want to look into there. But anybody got any other quarterbacks before we move on to tight ends here?
No, we're off the rails here on a season-long fantasy ranking show, and Mike's talking about Sam Darnold. Let's go to tight ends.
All right. So
what about Bo Nix? Should we mention Bo Nix?
I mean, we can.
You might as well mention all of the rookie quarterbacks, right? It's how much JJ plays. It's how much Drake May plays. Drake May is extremely talented. And it's a matter of if Bo Nix plays. I mean, these guys are not in very good offenses.
That's what I mean. Even if they do play, I don't see the upside in a Bo Nix. Even if Drake May does play, I don't see the upside of him in that offense. Like I don't see the upside in those guys. I'm not going to be drafting them. So
no, you're talking more for dynasty or 2 quarterback leagues for any of these guys. Even Darnold's even a reach. I mean, you're going to get a couple of weeks out of him. And,
no one's drafting Darnold but Mike. Let's
no. Once he sees ghosts on his first Monday Night Football game, he's fucking done anyway. So that's it.
All right. So tight ends, we have in tier 1. I have Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, Mark Andrews. Now Kelce obviously took a little bit of a step back last year. Was a little bit banged up earlier in the year, so I think they were playing it pretty safe with him. Lowest yardage total since 2015, but he's still Travis Kelce. He's playing with Mahomes. I mean, that alone is just a huge bump up. Now, they added some weapons here, so, you can maybe say that's a knock on him. But I think one of the reasons last year why he struggled is because they literally had no one. So he was double teamed on every single play. Now, with some outside pass catchers this year that you actually have to pay attention to, with Xavier Worthy, even if he's just running wind sprints, you got to pay attention to him. So I do think that it's going to take some safety help away from Kelce, and I think that improves his year big time. Sam Laporta, I mean, he looks like the real deal. The only worry is, that many touchdowns, especially as a rookie with how many weapons they have. He could possibly take a step back in the touchdown department. So I think I'd rather Kelce over him, but he's absolutely in the top 2, top 3 tight ends without a doubt. Mark Andrews is basically the wide receiver 1 for Baltimore. Can he stay healthy is really the question there, but I like Andrews here. And then I have Trey McBride here. I just think what he showed last year, I think this could be a superstar in the making, honestly. And we could be talking about him potentially as the number one tight end, maybe not this year, but going forward. So, Fitz, what do you think about the tight end tier that I have here?
I think you nailed it. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, Kelsey and Andrews are still the top guys. Just super consistent. The number one weapons in their targets for their quarterbacks. Kelsey, I agree. You get they're playing two safeties deep. There's no linebacker that's going to cover them one-on-one. So I like Kelsey on a bounce back year. Andrew's solid, and I do think these two young guys have entered the conversation. Sam Laporta, Trey McBride. Go-tos in their offenses. So I think there's no disagreement here.
Dave, what about you?
I'm either pushing Mark Andrews out of this tier or making this tier just Kelsey and Laporta. You said Andrews is the clear number one wide receiver there. I don't know that that's going to be completely factual this year. Zay Flowers made huge steps as a rookie this year. He could certainly take over the top of the target share there. And they're going to play a lot of two tight end sets. Isaiah Likely's going to be on the field where, I don't have Andrew's age here, but he is getting older and they don't need to rely on him as much as they have in the past. In the past, when he was putting up, tight end 2 numbers, he was literally the only guy there. They now have some sort of options, not a ton of them, but they have more options where I'm still high on Andrews, but Kelsey and Laporta are on a different tier. I think Andrews is closer to McBride. I'd probably put McBride ahead of him too. But I think that we've got a standalone up top and, some other guys down next year.
I'm not totally sold on Zay Flowers. I do think that he's a talented wide receiver, but I don't know if he's a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. I don't know if he's going to command that high of a target share. And we're talking about tight ends here, and the tight ends are a shit show. And with Mark Andrews, he's still going to demand targets. I think the only way he doesn't finish in the top 5 is if he's not healthy. And that is a question. He hasn't been healthy in the past. But when they get down to the goal line, everybody is going to be keying on Derrick Henry. And literally, you fake a handoff to Derrick Henry, and Andrews is just standing in the middle of the end zone wide open and scoring touchdowns. So I do think that that's going to be a possibility this year. And that's part of the reason why I have him up here. But, Mike, what are you thinking here?
Another vote for kind of split this tier up. I'm going to go against the grain here. I know that's going to be shocking, but I think Lapuerta is a standalone tier 1, and I think the other guys are a half a step behind. I think Kelsey's cliff is going to be severe. Can't tell you why, just kind of think it is. And Andrews is going to be splitting time. Likely is a good football player, and McBride is has a lot of potential here, but we haven't seen a ton of it. I don't want to drop him down, but I think I just think Lapuerta is the clear head and shoulders above the other 3.
I get it. I do think that is one thing I am worried about is I do have Kelsey number 1 overall, but I do worry that maybe he is just aging out. But even a Kelsey that's 80% of what he used to be in this tight end landscape, I do still think he could be extremely productive. Maybe not the number 1 overall, but until he gives me a reason to not trust him, I'm going to. As far as Laporta goes, I do think that he is extremely talented. I do think that you can make a case that he should be the number 1 overall, but a lot of it last year was touchdowns, and that's not a sticky stat, especially for a tight end. I mean, you see it even Kelsey. I mean, there's I think 3 years where he had 5 touchdowns and then had 13 or 15 the next. So it's just a little concerning when, especially as a rookie, he comes out and scores 10 touchdowns. Now, granted, he did add that with 86 receptions, so he's going to get a target share. I see the case for it, but I don't know if he's necessarily head and shoulders above all these guys here. But If we go to the next tier, I have George Kittle, Dalton Kincaid, and Evan Ingram. And basically with this, I mean, Kittle was the only tight end with 1,000 yards last year. If you take Ayuk off of that team, I mean, Kittle, you could probably make a case that you can move him up a tier. Now, I've never been a Kittle guy. He's just disappears for times and then he'll have explosions. But I think if you have a solid core as far as your wide receivers go and maybe some consistency, not just ceiling guys, taking the ceiling of Kittle actually makes a lot of sense. Then I have Dalton Kincaid, just similar to what we've seen with Andrews in the past. It's just who's going to be the wide receiver one for this team. We don't know, and we haven't seen it from Kincaid, but I do think that he can demand a large amount of targets, and maybe we do see him catch 85 balls this year, maybe somewhere around 800, even 900 yards. The question is going to be touchdowns, but to finish in this area as a tight end, I don't think you necessarily need to score 10 touchdowns. So that's why I have him there. And then similar with Evan Ingram, they added a lot of weapons in Jacksonville, but I think Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram are probably the two safest guys. Their role is not going to change because who they added, it's a lot of deep threats. So Ingram is going to be a target monster. You know, he almost broke the tight end reception record last year, and that's definitely in play again this year. So that's my tier that I have here. Dave, what do you think about that tier?
I've seen way too much Evan Ingram in a Giants uniform to have him anywhere near this tier. He got all those targets when Christian Kirk was out. They've added, and Ridley was banged up or just ineffective a lot last year. So I'm taking Ingram out of this tier for sure. He's got a lot more competition. Hopefully everyone around him stays healthy, but I think he got there on volume, strictly at a necessity last year, not that they necessarily wanted to do it. I agree with you on Dalton Kincaid. I think he could be the wide receiver one and play the old school Mark Andrews role for the Bills this year. The other name that I want to put in here is Kyle Pitts. He led all tight ends in air yards per reception last year. He is a freakish talent and now has a legitimate quarterback, which he has never had in the NFL. Desmond Ridder is not an NFL quarterback. He's probably, was lower than 32nd in terms of starting quarterbacks in the league last year, or just quarterbacks in the league last year. So he's got real potential this year. I mean, if Kyle Pitts is going to do it, it's now, or else he's just not going to be in the league much longer, because if he can't do it in this offense, there's obviously something wrong. And Kittle's a great player for best ball. Kittle I like a lot more if Ayuk leaves, but you never feel comfortable about having Kittle in your lineup. I mean, he's a great DraftKings play because he's going to score 4 touchdowns or he's going to get you 2 points. That type of boomer bust in, your season-long fantasy is really tough to stomach with the draft capital you're going to put into him.
Fair points. The only thing I'll say with Ingram is he sucked on the Giants. Since he's left the Giants, he's definitely been much better. And I don't expect 114 receptions this year, but even if he catches 85 balls and maybe he was just under 1,000 yards last year, let's say 85 balls for 850 yards, that's probably still good enough for tight end 5, even if he only scores 3 touchdowns. So that's part of the reason why I have him here. And I don't know. I just go ahead.
I mean, his target share was just so extremely high last year. I mean, you're looking at almost 24% of the team targets overall. And that was even higher when there was just nobody around him. You get Kirk back. I like Brian Thomas. I've always been a big Gabe Davis fan. I think they have a lot of stuff out there that'll give Trevor Lawrence some options. I like this offense, but I don't think it revolves around Ingram.
I don't think it revolves around Ingram. That wasn't really what I was saying. If that was misconstrued, what I'm saying is Gabe Davis is just a deep threat, and the roles that Ingram and Kirk have, I don't think they're going to change significantly. I do think they will take a step back because they do have more weapons this year. But even if he doesn't have a 24% target share, I mean, 19%, 18%. Like I said, I still see him catching somewhere around 80 balls, and I think that's good enough in the tight end landscape. Now, if we were talking about wide receivers, that would be a totally different conversation, but I think he's good enough to finish as a top 5-6 tight end. Mike, what are you thinking here at tight end?
I mean, I'll play your little game, but I say it every year. Like, we're at the point of the tight ends where, like, the next 12 dudes are all the exact same fucking thing to me. Like, I just don't give a shit. Give me 2 of them, and I'll figure it out, and I'll hit the waiver wire if I have to. Kittle, I think you're right. Like, I think Kittle, Kincaid, Ingram is if you want to put somebody on top of the shit heap, I think these are the 3 to probably do it. I won't steal Pitts from Fitz. I'll let him go off on his little thing there, but I think we all kind of, are hopeful for Pitts. Like, this is the year. Kittle is probably the top of the pile of shit because, he'll get some of those weird San Francisco plays. Like, he'll probably get a throwing touchdown this year at some point. He'll get a rushing touchdown at some point this year. He'll get that weird goofy shit. So as long as he can stay healthy, he squeezes out a couple of points. But like, I just don't give a shit here.
Fair enough. Fitz?
All right, Mike, tell us how you really feel.
I do.
All right.
I always tell you guys how I feel.
So, yeah, I disagree as far as, I don't think it's just a big mix here. I think after this tier, it gets a little shaky. But as far as this tier, I agree with Kittle and Ingram. Dave, I just think you're a little jaded as a Giant fan. Giants haven't done anything with the tight end position, ruined every tight end in forever. And Ingram was bad there, but he hasn't had the dropsies. He's got a good rapport with Trevor Lawrence. So I like Ingram here. I like Kittle here. I see the upside in Kincaid. He just hasn't done it yet, and I'm not sold. So, Dave kind of took my thunder, but I'll take another guy that hasn't done it yet. Kyle Pitts, you mentioned it. At least I'm not the only one here going to be screaming Kyle Pitts. Dave, at least we're on the same page there. It's now or never. It's this year, or he's legit just not what I thought he was. But what I thought he was an absolute stud, top tight end in the league. I mean, the guy, when I watched him at Florida, was just, just a freak. So I think if you can get him, you had Arthur Smith there last year using, Jonnu Smith and just having Pitts blocking. I mean, put him out in space, get him matched up against a linebacker and a safety. It'll get him playing a little more receiver. Now he's got a quarterback in Kirk Cousins, and Arthur Smith is out of there. So I do. I'll take Kincaid out and put Pitts here, but I like Kittle, Pitts, and Ingram in this tier.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I'll move to tier 3, and I have Ferguson, Pitts, and Bowers. And Pitts, for me, I do think that he's absolutely worth taking a chance this year. I do think that he could finish much higher than where I have him. But we've seen a lot of athletic tight ends just not work out, and it hasn't worked out for him so far. Yes, I get that Kirk Cousins is by far the best quarterback that he's ever had, but Kirk Cousins is coming off an Achilles tear. I mean, we don't know that he's going to be 100%. And Drake London is probably still going to get the bulk of the targets there. So I do see the case for Pitts. The floor, I don't think, is there as much, so I just have him a little bit further down. I do prefer Jake Ferguson a little bit more. Now, same thing. He was a little bit more touchdown reliant last year, but on the Cowboys, I mean, it's basically CeeDee Lamb and him. I mean, Brandon Cooks will have a couple games here and there, but I do think Ferguson is pretty consistent when it comes to the tight end position. I do think he is a good tight end, and he's going to score a good amount of touchdowns from year to year. So I do like him. And then I have Bowers in this tier. Just, I mean, he similar to Pitts. I mean, I think he's one of the best tight end prospects to come out in quite some time. Now, the landing spot is not great, but I do think with his ability and draft capital, they're going to try and get him the ball. So that's what I have for here. Mike, what do you think about those 3 guys?
Where is Bowers' landing spot? Is he in Vegas?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I don't hate that. Is Minshew starting there?
They haven't said yet, so
But
you'd
he's
prefer
going
to
to
be
beat
Minshew.
out O'Connell, right? Like we could all think that
you would think so.
O'Connell. Okay,
you
so
would think so.
I don't hate that. Like I think Minshew can sling there. I think that's kind of an intriguing upside kind of play. I like Schultz probably better than a bunch of these dudes. If I'm going to be high on CJ Stroud, a second-year young quarterback, like I should be high on his tight end. And I know that he's got this like an A+ receiving core, but tight ends are generally young quarterbacks, kind of safety blankets. Hawkinson is interesting based on where I can get him. And I know I'm going down just because I don't agree with Ferguson. I think okay. I don't feel like he needs to be here. I already pushed Pitts potentially up a tier. So, Hawkinson, if I can get cheap, again, Darnold is going to have an absolutely monster year. So, if Hawkinson can get healthy, that could be a good stretch run piece. And, I probably put Schultz ahead of most of them.
Fair enough. So, Dave, what are you thinking here?
I think Mike's an idiot and Schultz just can't earn targets in Houston's
there's too
offense.
many. There's too many mouths to feed there.
But this tier I'm more in line with. I think the only one who I'm bumping up here, Hawkinson would be in this tier or above if he was going to play 16 games, but he's not. 17 games. David Njoku I'm putting in this tier, probably ahead of Ferguson also, coming off a career high or career year overall.
Yeah, but Joe Flacco's not there.
Correct, but Deshaun Watson should be better, right? He can't be any worse.
But Watson has not thrown to Njoku at all while they've been on the team.
He saw it work for Flacco, so now he's going to make sure that he knows what he's doing there. I mean, they have Amari Cooper and not much else there, so Njoku should still be a part of that offense. He's only 28 years old. Bowers is a huge wild card. This screams Kyle Pitts of a couple of years ago. This screams of every generational talent, tight end talent that we've seen.
Screams of Njoku.
I think he's a better prospect than Njoku. Hawkinson, Noah Fant, all those guys, but he should be better than all of them because everyone that comes out is better than the last one that we've ever seen. But he is an elite talent, and he's another one that can be a big role in that Vegas offense too, past Adams. So, I think you got these pretty good. I'd bump down Ferguson a little bit. I might even bump up Goddard also because he's probably wide receiver 3 or the third option in Philly. So pretty much agree with what you're doing here. And Mike's an idiot. Schultz is, I wouldn't have Schultz even on this list here.
Yeah, Goddard was in consideration to be in this tier. He's been so incredibly consistent throughout his career. There's times where you just think he's going to be an incredible tight end and he just disappears for stretches. So that's part of my worry. Most of that offense goes through the wide receivers. So I'd be fine with him if he was my only tight end, but I'd rather these other guys. Hawkinson, absolutely. If he was going to be back, but he might not be back till like week 10. So, take him later and stash him maybe if you want, if you have a spot. Schultz, I agree that would be late if I just missed out on tight ends. Same with Freiermuth. Although I do think if Ayuk doesn't end up in the Steelers, he could possibly be the number 2 target there. So maybe him. Fitz, is there anyone further down that you're looking at as far as the tight end position goes?
No, Dave kind of stole my thunder there. I think, I agree with you on Ferguson and Pitts, even though I had Pitts higher. But I'm not sold on Brock Bowers. You guys said it. I'm always been wary of rookie tight ends. Laporta kind of changed that last year, but I don't think that's going to be the norm.
You've always been wary of rookie tight ends?
Yeah. I mean, I drafted Hawkinson and drafted Pitts, but those were in dynasty leagues. I didn't draft them in redrafts thinking they were going to be, gangbusters off the bat. So, that's a hard position to transfer from college into the NFL. So, Brock Bowers, super talented, but I'm not drafting him this early. I'm not putting him in this tier. I do like Dallas Goedert. I know, Kellen Moore is there now. He likes to use the tight end. We're at a camp. He's getting some more passes thrown to him. So maybe a little more involved in that offense. So probably Goddard, obviously Hawkinson, if he's healthy. You mentioned Njoku. I mean, as far as this tier, I don't think there's anybody else I'd put up here.
Derek, is Taysom Hill in your quarterback or tight end rankings?
Probably depends on where you're playing, I guess. All right, so if we're talking late guys, Taysom Hill I do like as a drafting as a tight end. I mean, he's
got opportunity now.
Yeah,
Johnson's
I'm pretty sure Underdog has him as a quarterback, so
he's a tight end on DraftKings.
He's involved.
Yeah, yep.
I mean, if we're talking super late dart throws, I'll throw a guy out there that coming out of college I've been on and hasn't done anything yet. But Greg Dulcich in Denver. He's finally healthy, and if he's healthy, Sean Payton could use him in that joker role and kind of get him involved. I like Greg Dulcich as a flyer.
I mean, they got some competition out there, but I also agree with you. I think he'll end up winning out. And you also have, just for opportunity, there's some other guys, Luke Musgrave, a little bit down the list. If you're high on Jordan Love, he's another one that's going to struggle to earn targets, but he's going to be in that good offense. And, rookie tight end, but Theo Johnson's coming out of camp pretty strong. They were hyping him up on Hard Knocks. We're talking super late, probably not even redraft, but
I mean, if he wants to go nuts tonight in preseason DraftKings, I'm fine with that because I have him in a couple lineups.
Sounds like Drew Lock already got hurt, so we're off to a great start here.
Fantastic. I got tons of DeVito too. Let's go.
T. Johnson guy on the Giants tight end. Is he
literally what he just said?
The guy that
just the guy we were talking about.
Well, I was looking through the screenshot, so I couldn't. So is he good?
Yeah, he is out of Penn State. He's a rookie tight end. He's got a lot to learn.
He's Wave's most targeted, most highest owned best ball player. So no,
I know that was the screenshot I was looking for.
He's big and fat.
I never heard of the dude.
So.
He's got a lot of pedigree, but I think he's a bit raw. They really liked him coming out, and he's got no competition. Clay Bellinger's there too, but or Cody Bellinger. Clay Bellinger plays baseball. No, one of those guys plays baseball. Anyway, he's got some opportunity.
All right. Well, I think we've exhausted this one, and I'd say we're in preseason form, but with all the technical difficulties, that's basically par for the course for us. So I think we're in mid-season form. Good job, guys.
I was going to say, I
nailed it.
We went
nailed it.
Hour and 20 on quarterbacks and tight ends. Wait till we get to the other ones.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it'll get chopped up a little bit, but that's going to do it for this one. Quarterbacks and tight ends. We're getting ready for the NFL season. Definitely excited for it. But Dave, thanks for joining.
Always good to be here. Always good to get into football season. And, we're almost there, guys. Just a few weeks away.
And Mike?
Can't wait for the Jets show.
Oh, yeah, it's coming. And Fitz?
Yeah. I'm ready for some football. Good stuff, guys.
All right, gentlemen. We will be back next week to talk wide receivers. And as always, check out theHelmSports.com. Don't really have much up there right now, but I will have any future bets that I decide to make. Haven't really looked too much. Been in the golf season mode, so definitely going to take a look at some future markets. So check that out. The Helm Sports Substack. The newsletter will come right to you. We'll have everything you need for DraftKings and setting your lineups, all the injuries on each Sunday. So check that out. But that's going to do it for this week. First football episode in the books, and it went pretty well. I think we did a pretty good job of covering the quarterbacks and tight ends. So make sure you come back next week. But that's going to do it for me. I am your host, Derek Helm. And remember,
just have fun out there.